And I'm here to talk to you guys about what I've learned by working with some of the FTSE 100 leaders that we can use when we're building our own teams. This talk today is going to cover leadership styles, so personal leadership skills and professional leadership as well, and then how to use the indication skills to have impactful conversations with our clients, our prospects, and even in our personal lives as well. If you're a leader, or if you're the owner of a small business, or you're looking to build a team, this is exactly the skills that we found to be what's needed in order to succeed. At the moment, 65% of companies with vacancies right now are struggling to fill in these spots. And the other interesting study that was found was that only about 28% or so are saying that there's any sort of formal leadership training that's happening for managers. And yet the majority of the vacancies that I talked about are coming from the middle management level. I don't know, if you ask me, there's some kind of a misconnection that's happening right here, right? And this is not me making these things up. This is a study done by the London Chamber of Commerce that presented these numbers, and also the Manpower Group survey, which is typically used by the government to talk about unemployment rates and things like that. This is where I come in. So hi, my name's Ash, and I'm a leadership consultant. So I help small and large companies to develop emotionally intelligent leaders and high-performing teams, prevent burnouts, and overall create a motivational culture. Imagine this, right? You've got shut off in the last couple of years people away from having interpersonal relationships, and whether it's professionally or personally, which meant that there's a massive decline in the way that people have behaved, the way that people have interacted with each other. The biggest skill gap that they found in the middle management level is the interpersonal skills and communication skills. Interestingly as well, that is also what people said that they wanted most within modern day leaders. The crazy thing is, the same studies have found that the companies that already had emotionally intelligent leaders, or the people who were good at people skills, kept their clients, kept their people, and did not get affected by the Great Resignation. If you think about that, it's no longer just the fact that you have IQ to be a good leader. It's also the fact that you need to have EQ. Right? Emotional intelligence. Before, it used to be a thing that you were a really smart person, you were a logical thinker, and you were able to tackle large problems in a strategic manner. You could suddenly be seen as a leader within your firm. But now, emotional intelligence trumps all of those skills. You can learn to think in a framework. You can learn to think logically, but it's really difficult to come up with emotional intelligence in a short period of time. In a recent survey that NatWest and the Royal Bank of Scotland did, they found that the second biggest reason for why people were leaving was because of the lack of feeling of belonging, or a lack of feeling of being valued within their company. Of course, you can probably also guess that the first reason was because the pay package that they got wasn't good enough to keep them in. But if you think about that, this is the second highest reason why most people were quitting. And at the same time, the highest skill in demand was people skills. You can see where the opportunity lies. So this is where your professional and personal leadership skills need to come in. Again, if you're a leader in a team or a small business owner, this is it, okay? So the first thing you gotta realize is, what type of leader are you? Because when we go and work with FTSE 100 leaders, they already have an idea of what kind of leader they are, but the people underneath them, so the middle management level, they don't. And like I said at the beginning, only about 28% of companies that we speak to ever actually have any formal training in place anyway for leadership. So people become managers because they were good at what they did in terms of a job. And now suddenly they were expected to lead teams. And so the job that they were really good at becomes a small part of their role. Instead, they have to lead teams. Which of these top 6 do you fall under? In a broad sense, right? Everything is a bit fluctuating, but of course, everybody has a dominant leadership style. So quickly talk about them. Authoritative is not authoritarian, as in it's not the directional one, like, hey, you do this, you do this. It's more a lead by example, right? This person is usually considered to be a big vision thinker, a visionary that people would want to follow. Delegative is, as it says on the tin, kind of delegate the thing, but also very hands-off, so not micromanaging. You can imagine the opposite of micromanager, just somebody who lets you get on with your thing. That can work quite well sometimes, depending on the team you're in. The transactional style is more of a manager, like a typical manager you can think about, right? Somebody who has a structure in place, somebody who uses incentives and penalties to drive motivation within the team. Somebody who's a transformational leader would be the typical one-person band, the person who takes on absolutely everything and says, yeah, we can do this, but also is a person who bonds the team together, has the biggest passion, is the loudest voice, that person is usually considered to be the transformational style leader. Then we've got the participative one. This person is usually quite democratic. You kind of know this person, right? The one who's always asking everybody what they think, trying to include as many people as possible before they make any decisions going forward. And then you have the servant type leader, heavily team focused. So really want to think about what everybody else wants before what they want. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to each of these leadership styles. Definitely recommend for you to think about where you fall under and then look into what the advantages and disadvantages are for each. Of course, had we given more time, we'd have talked about each of those things in detail. And when we work with our companies and clients, we typically go into detail for each of them to see actually how does your leadership style fit within your team. And so understanding this will definitely give you a better idea of how to utilize this within your own, whether it be department, within your own team that you're going to develop, and it will even influence the hiring decisions that you might make. Regardless of the leadership style that you pick, don't be fooled by thinking that that is the only way to go. Just because you have a dominant one doesn't mean that that's going to be the easiest one for you to always lead by. So sometimes you might need to fluctuate to see where you go and where you don't go. These are the essential skills that we found to work for people. So the first one is decision making. Okay, if you want to be an effective leader, you want to know how to use the 80% rule to your advantage. Okay, so don't wait for 100% of knowledge to come into your lap or information to come into your lap before you make decisions, because that will never happen. So instead, as soon as you figure out, you think 70%, 80% of work is done, of the information that you know, you can make a decision to go forward. This is a rule that Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos talk about all the time, and it seems to be working quite well. And so once you've decided where to go, follow that path and then course correct as you go on. Because it's easier to course correct when you're already on the path than never go on the path in the first place. Okay? And especially as a small business, this is one of the longest lead time is waiting time to figure out where to start, what to do. And finally, you've got to realize sometimes you might not be the best person to make a decision. And sometimes you are. Okay, so effective leaders need to be able to identify when and who needs to be in the room to make the decision. I was speaking to one of the strategy leads in Amazon the other day, and they have a 2-pizza rule. So for example, when they want to make a decision for something, they only need to have people in the room that 2 pizzas can feed. If they have any more, they have too many decision makers, right? Too many people involved. So second one we've got is in emotional intelligence. Of course, as I mentioned, it's one of the most crucial skills that's prevalent right now. First one, you got to be clued up on DE&I, so diversity, equity, and inclusivity. This is not just the race, ethnicity, gender, that kind of stuff, but it's also more of the softer side of things, which is about people's backgrounds, how they think. Like I mentioned, how do they like to follow or how do they like to lead within teams, depending on what you're hiring for. You don't want to be just surrounded by a bunch of yes people who say yes to everything you do. It's not going to be useful for you. Okay, and understanding and regulating your own emotions is a must. As a leader and a business owner, you often get the brunt of almost everything that happens at any given moment, right? So you still need to maintain a level-headed behavior so that your team can be motivated in the same way. Again, the EMEA lead that I was talking to from Amazon, she made a great point, which is that whatever she faces, her team will face too. So if she gets stressed out, her team feels the stress. If she's happy, her team will feel the happiness. So when you're building these teams, you got to think about that for yourself. How do you feel on a regular basis? How do you make sure that your level of emotions is on a high, right? And also finally, you've got to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team members and know how to motivate them. Leader can make or break the team overall. I don't know if you've seen the show Physical 100 on Netflix, but in that one, there's a great example where all of them are 100 top athletes in their field. But when they do team activities, depending on how good the leader is, the team will fail or succeed. And they all attribute their success to their leader, which is crazy because all of them are leaders in their own right? So you got to think about how important that whole thing is. Finally, the most critical thing is communication skills. You've got to understand how to master your own communication skills as a leader, but you got to first figure out what is your dominant style. Are you a passive style speaker, passive aggressive, assertive, or aggressive? Once you figured out those 4, you can then figure out what the other people's communication styles are, right? So you understand your own, then you can identify that in other people, and then you can learn how you can fluctuate between the different things so that you can communicate with the right people at the right time. For example, if somebody is a quiet person and is usually quite soft-spoken, and you're a loud, expressive type, you can't go with your high energy to this person and imagine that they're going to follow along with you, right? They're going to be a little bit like, whoa. But if you go soft and then rise up, it'll be much easier. The opportunity is in that if you can master these things, the best talent will come to you and will stay with you. And as I said, the studies have shown that employees who work for emotionally intelligent leaders are engaged, more productive, and more satisfied with their jobs, and way more likely to stay for the long run. And this same goes for the clients that you work with as well. Repeat buys is an all-time high with good leaders. Now you're probably wondering, what are the other secrets you need to know to be successful in the current world? Well, in this video, I interview a multimillionaire who's gone from being homeless to building a $1.2 billion company in just 6 years. So check that out. And by the way, while you're there, subscribe to this channel so you can see more of this sort of content and get your leadership skills to the next level. I will see you in the next one.